Pan da croeso pawb, Cynghorydd Charlie McCreery ydw I, Fiedi Owenydd y Cyngor. Can I welcome everybody to today's meeting, which is a hybrid meeting. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live streaming fail, the meeting will continue and a recording will be available through the Council's website following the conclusion of the meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available and for those attending on Zoom to choose the language of your choice. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those on Zoom, please use the raised hand function. We will alternate between speakers in the chamber and on Zoom. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will be enabled to use the chat facility. Committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their camera on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain the integrity of the decision-making process. If you do need to leave the meeting temporarily, pop a message in the chat function so the Democratic Services Officer is aware and then let us know when you return. I expect everyone present and participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately and be respectful to each other's. That applies to members, officers and everyone in the public gallery. So we'll move on to agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence.
Apologies received from Councillor Penny Andow and Liz Roberts. Any others?
Councillor Jeff Stewart as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, diolch. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest, Code of Local Government Conduct. Members are reminded they must declare the existence and nature of their declared personal interest. Councillor Chris.
And thank you, Leader. Yes, it's item 9, which is the council tax payments on long-term empty homes and second homes. My wife has a property that falls into one of those categories, so I will declare prejudicial interest and leave the room at that point.
Okay, diolch Chris. Cynghorydd Dillon.
School governor at Ysgol Ysbyty. Will that?
Is that local authority appointed?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it will be personal only.
Personal only.
Personal,
so I can stay in.
Personal
and
only.
Be
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Councillor Nigel.
Thank you. Just a clarification, Matt. Again, with the education, the amalgamation of Orid and Myers Owen, my grandchildren go there. Is there anything I have to declare?
I think that'll be personal only in the circumstances that this is for a consultation essentially on that proposal.
I'd like to declare personal interest as an LEA governor in Ysgol Glangella on the same item. Is no other item? Declarations, members? No. Agenda item 3 is urgent matters.
Sorry, Councillor Cheryl Carlisle has her hand up.
Apologies, I can't see. Cheryl?
Dear Councillor Charlie, yeah, just Cadogan surgery is mentioned in the RLDP section. I'm a patient of Cadogan surgery and will be asking a particular question about that. Thank you.
So that's a personal interest, I'm guessing, Matt?
I expect it's a personal interest. The question just doesn't relate to the interest, presumably.
No, it's a general question, not about my health.
Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 3, which is urgent.
Sorry, Leader, I've got Councillor Sue Shotter with a hand up as well.
Okay, Councillor Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Just to let you know, I have a second property. I will be leaving the room as well. Thank you.
Okay, apologies, I'm having a bit of trouble seeing this online. Is there anybody else? No, we're happy? Okay, so
Chair, Chair, I do have my hand up for the same reasons as Councillor Cheryl. It's Councillor Chris Hughes.
Can I bring the Chief Executive? Because I'm sure we're all patients at some medical centre or other.
Could I ask members one online if you could turn your camera on, because we can't see the hands in the chamber. If you got your camera on, we can see the hands. So that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Can I just check with the monitoring officer, because most of it will be registered at one medical practice or another.
Yeah, it's at most a personal interest, isn't it? Leader, that would be my advice in respect of that matter. And as Councillor Cheryl's declared, Councillor Chris has declared it's at most a personal interest.
Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 3, which is urgent matters. Not aware that we have any. Agenda item 5, announcements for the leaders. Nothing from me at this time. Agenda item 6 is announcements by the Chief Exec.
No.
Also nothing. So agenda item 7. Sorry.
Councillor Chris, could you please just mute your microphone?
Okay, agenda item 7 is to review the Cabinet Forward Working Programme. It's on pages 11 to 39. Members, any questions or observations? If not, can we show for in favour of accepting the Forward Working Programme? Okay, so we'll move on to the first substantive item, which is agenda item 8, sits in the Audit Policy and Performance portfolio. The first part is the revised Local Development Plan, Population and Housing Growth, Health Impact and Mitigation, which is on pages 40 to 80. I think Alison Kemp, Associate Director of Primary Care and Community Services, is joining us for this item. Not sure if she's joined us. Hi, very warm welcome to you, Alison. Thanks for coming to the meetings. Much appreciated. So I'll hand over to Councillor Chris, who's a portfolio holder.
Thank you, Leader. And it's nice to see Alison Kemp there. Hello, Roundar. This report presents the background paper 44, the health impact and mitigation regarding the population and housing growth of the replacement local development plan. It has the fundamental aim of detailing the RLDP growth options and their potential impact and mitigation for health and primary care. It's been delayed first by the general election period and then Economy in Place Overview and Scrutiny's recommendation of the 24th of July was that the report be deferred. The resolution from that scrutiny committee was for satisfactory responses from the Health Board be obtained regarding concerns raised about mitigations. So 8 questions were put to the Health Board, and these questions and the responses obtained are in front of us today on pages 77 to 79. That is at the end of the Statement of Common Ground appendix. They were circulated, the questions and answers were circulated to every elected member on the 10th of September. I will come back to the Statement of Ground, Leader, but first I want to go into the report properly. The report details the RLDP projected population growth. That's 4,950 residents during the plan period. The plan period being 2018 to 2033. And table 2, which I think is going to be brought up on the screen. Gives us the increase by the RLDP spatial area. You can see the map showing the strategy areas on page 59. Where residential developments, whether on allocated or windfall sites, are likely to cause or exacerbate capacity issues at local health services, financial contributions will be sought to address these matters. These can be Section 106 monies, and I must emphasize at this point that the capacity issue relevant here is the physical infrastructure, not that due to medical staffing or management issues. Also, contributions sought cannot be based on remedying an existing deficiency. There is a national guidance of 50 dwelling threshold, so we're not talking about those housing applications that are below 50 dwellings. Starting on page 44, each strategy area is examined for the percentage of new housing planned for the area. For example, at 3.14, you can see that 360 new homes are projected for Llanfyddwechyn, Penmaenmawr and Dwygyfylchi, which results in an estimated 495 new residents. There are 2 consequent actions listed. The first one is if evidence indicates it is necessary that the Plas Manai surgery will have that needs an increased physical capacity, then financial contributions will be sought to achieve this at the existing surgery site. The second action is as the Conway Town surgeries overlap the West and Craven strategy areas, the Conway West Health and Wellbeing Hub is a big factor. In answer to one of the questions put to Betsy Cadwaladr University Health Board, you can see on page 78 that the Health Board confirms it is developing an outline business case to secure Welsh Government capital, and their preferred site is Two Tills Fields. So I want to return now to the central RLDP strategy area, which comprises Rhos-on-Sea, Colwyn Bay, Old Colwyn, Mochtra and Llysfan. 35% of the new housing is planned for here. In other words, 1,260 new houses, but some of these will already have been built. The remainder will be from newly allocated, already committed sites with planning permission and windfall sites. So we're talking about 1,725 new residents. The actions are presented on page 46, but I want to point out an update on Cadogan surgery, which has come from the Health Board. At overview and scrutiny, we had a presentation from Dr. Rashford representing Cadogan surgery, Old Colwyn, who emphasised that this surgery was already at capacity and had no appetite for running a branch surgery. So therefore, the reference to branch surgery has been removed from the report. The possibilities of altering catchment boundaries, increasing capacity at the neighbouring Gwych surgery, involving the Health Board managed West End Medical Centre, and using clinical accommodation outside the Cadogan building are all covered in the report and what Betsy Cadwallader has presented to us. So the update is really welcome. Section 106 monies, as you can see, would be needed from the new housing developments in this area. In background paper 44, you will notice that after each section covering the list of residential sites in a strategy area, there's a note indicating that each table of sites will be updated for the RLDP deposit following agreement of the RLDP site allocations and numbers. It is not the intention of this report, Leader, in front of us today to delve into specific sites. Elected members will have the final site presentations to look forward to as part of the formal deposit stage and examination in public. So let's turn to the statement of common ground between our authority and Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board. I think we all recognise that more patients, existing pressures, the ageing population structure, and the numbers of residents living with long-term conditions are significant pressures for the Health Board. Details of GP surgery provision have been clarified further, and I refer to page 80, where the list sizes and GP numbers are given for each practice. We are assured that a primary care strategy is committed to and is in the early stages of development. The Health Board has also asked that consideration be given to clinical accommodation availability in or added to existing community buildings. This community asset approach is an interesting initiative to help solve shortfalls in areas of new housing, and elected members will expect, I'm sure, further clarity going forwards. I believe the Health Board has its own potential options as part of its wider strategy and infrastructure needs over and above the RLDP. This RLDP health report does not consider or recommend suggested community sites. I have to say that the likelihood is that the housing impact on health services from the plan will not come to fruition until at least 2028, 2029. So the statement of ground sets out an agreed position statement for the inspector at examination. The Health Board has not put in a formal objection either to the level of growth to be provided over the 15-year period, nor to particular applications. On page 75, the implementation of the strategic vision outlined in A Healthier Wales, Our Plan for Health and Social Care is referred to, and this was updated in 2022. Consultation has been very thorough. It's been wider than the Health Board and healthcare stakeholders. As I previously mentioned, this has been to overview and scrutiny, the strategic planning group, and replacement LDP update sessions have been held for elected members and also the town and community councils. I fully support the up-to-date evidence-based approach here, and that the RLDP will take a positive approach to new and existing sites. Finally, I emphasize again that financial contributions will be sought from developers where increased healthcare facility capacity is required. I would like to commend the work, engagement and collaboration that the strategic planning team has so ably accomplished. Bryn Cuffin and James Harland online are present to answer any relevant questions. And I am grateful to Alison Kemp, the Associate Director for Primary Care and Community Services, for attending this afternoon. Alison has agreed to answer supplementary questions further to those raised at overview and scrutiny. Leader, I would ask that these are relevant to the remit of the RLDP. The Health Board will be attending a session before full council on the 17th of October, so other matters can be covered then. The recommendations are on page 41 at 2.2. I would like to slightly amend the section about delegated authority about minor amendments, so it reads in consultation with the relevant cabinet member. So that's it for me at the moment. I have my own question for Alison, but I think it's time I hand it over to somebody else. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, Diolch, Chris, thank you for taking us through that report so comprehensively. So I'll open it up, members, for any questions. Councillor Nigel.
Chair, just a question really for Bryn. It mentions in the report about Kimmel Bay Medical Surgery being at capacity, and that if any new developments were to come forward, they would have to make changes to that facility. Does the report take into consideration the adaptation or enlargement of properties? Certainly, we may not have been able to build new homes in Town and Kimmel Bay area, but I think there's been a substantial amount of upper floor extensions, raising the property up, so making a 2-bedroom bungalow into like a 4-bedroom property, and those properties obviously have additional habitants. So I just wonder whether they take that into consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We certainly do in terms of windfall. It's included in our windfall figures. As you know, there's no allocations, no residential allocations as such, due to the flood issues over there. But it's certainly built into the figures in terms of windfall. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Sherrill online.
Thank you very much for letting me speak, Leader. First of all, I'd like to thank James and Bryn and the team for all the work they've put in, and to thank Alison for turning up today to answer our questions. Apologies, I can't put my camera on. Every time I put that on, the connection goes. So I'm afraid you're spared the sight of me. So that's fine. I've got a couple of questions. The first one is for Councillor Chris. In E&P on the 24th of July, the decision notice, the recommendation was to defer pending satisfactory responses from our concerns raised. Do you as a cabinet feel that these have been answered satisfactorily, please? Or do you think this mitigates all the concerns that cross-party members had at the original meeting? That's my first question, please, Councillor Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Sherrill. Yeah, we obviously are going to get more detail on this. As I said in my presentation just now, the community asset-based approach is an interesting initiative. It may solve some of the shortfalls. We don't know. I think we've got to wait and see how the Health Board's primary care strategy works out. They've admitted that it is only at an initial stage, so perhaps Alison wants to comment on that, but you and I know there's a lot more work to go, but I think the statement of common ground is very clear, and I know this is only a beginning, but we have got that, and I think it gives us a way forward, certainly. So thank you for putting those questions. I think it was right to pause and get the response from the Health Board. As you know, we've got to stick to the remit of the replacement local development plan. And I know that you will be asking questions about other matters at the session before full council on the 17th of October. So there will be that opportunity as well, Councillor Sherrill.
Thanks very much, Councillor Chris. Yes, I mean, you mentioned the statement of common ground. I'm really concerned that it hasn't got any specified outcomes, deliverables, or any sort of financial projections in it. That is my real concern in that. And if Councillors Penny and Liz were here, I would have asked them what discussions they've had with Betsy about being able to improve the well-being of the primary care services for our residents here in Conway. So that's my concern, that the statement of common ground has got no proper deliverables or outcomes we can measure. I've got a couple of questions for Alison, if that's okay, Councillor Charlie.
Yeah, could you try and do it in one go, Cheryl? We've got a lot of speakers.
Yep,
and quite a
sure,
crowded agenda, so
absolutely.
thank you.
First one is Tuthill Fields, please, Alison. When will the outline business case be submitted, and what are your expected timeframes for this? I note that Nantucket was first considered in 2016, and we're 8 years on, and cross-party members are really concerned about the same sort of time lag on this. That was my first one. Thank you.
So the outline business case is being developed at the moment. We have some design work. We're doing some highways access work at the moment. The outline business case should be submitted at the end of 2025. I know that sounds like a long way away, but what we have to do in that time is completely design the site, the building, right down to room design, what it looks like, all of those sorts of things. So there's a huge amount of detailed work that goes into that outline business case, and that's the stage that we're at. We're currently out to procurement for the architect, the project managers, the quantity surveyors, etc., all of that support, and that will then enable us to do the detailed design. In the background, the work has been done. We share your frustration about some of the time it's taken to get us to this point, and we are pushing very hard to bring this to a conclusion as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much, Diolch. And my second question is around
Cheryl, as I said before, we've got quite a lot of people here who want to speak, and can we please just
this
ask
is my,
one
yeah,
question?
this is my
move on,
second
please, and
question.
can we focus on the report at hand as well, please?
Yep, absolutely. Cadogan catchment areas will be dramatically reduced. This is causing great concern as the West End practice does not seem to be able to function correctly. And Dr. Ratchford, who came to talk to us at EMP, made it very, very clear that Cadogan would not be able to provide a branch surgery. And I just wondered if you had any more specifics about that, please.
So the approach we're trying to take is to be open as possible to try and meet people's needs, and one of the things the population needs is good housing, and we don't want to stand in the way of that. And what we're trying to do is mitigate the impact of where those houses are built and how that's managed. The options, as I think we've explained before, are that Cadogan, if the patients are within any practice's boundary, that they are supported to increase their own physical capacity if that's required, and that may or may not require the provision of a branch surgery. it is each practice's responsibility to provide the accommodation from which it fulfills its general medical services contract. It isn't the Health Board's responsibility to do that, but as a Commissioner of Care, we want to support that wherever we can. So we've talked with Conwy Council colleagues about the options, which are that Cadogan be supported to operate a branch, but do not have to meet the capital needs of securing that. And so that's where this capital asset notion comes in, as to whether we could use space in an existing building that a practice like Cadogan, for example, could use, should they choose to. The other option is to adjust the boundary within which a practice operates, so that by adjusting the boundary, you thereby adjust the list size. And that clearly consequently has an impact on the practices either side. The West End medical practice has potential physical capacity. It has a top floor that can be kitted out. It's currently a shell, although there is a fairly significant capital cost to do that. And that capital would have to be found through appropriate sources. We are in a position, this isn't necessarily about specifics, but we are in a position where we are able to recruit, or have been able to recruit, more GPs for the West End medical practice. And that will be in a stronger position to be able to manage a different list size than it has been in the past. And that's something that we've always kept an eye on, which is by the time houses are built, we would expect to be in a stronger position and to have been able to continue having open dialogue with Cadogan Surgery.
Thank you, Alison. Diolch.
Councillor Julie.
Thank you, Leader. Excuse me, and thank you for the report. My questions are for Alison as well, really. Just to try and understand a little bit around, excuse me, what provision might look like. So I'm the local member for Deganwy. Our practice doesn't really run anymore. I think they were doing half a day a week, but most patients tend to go to Penryn Bay, and I have one of the strategic site proposals in my ward for, we're not entirely sure how many houses yet, but perhaps around 200 or 150. So I just want to better understand. I've spent this morning in a meeting where we're talking about, you know, the population change and the impact that has on us as a local authority. You mentioned in your responses the promotion of health and well-being is a shared responsibility between partners. I guess I just want to understand a little bit about what you think that means, and how, you know, it mentions in here, excuse me, and we're all aware that we have an aging population and we have some of the highest rates of older population in the whole of the UK, really. So the only thing that it seems to touch on there is diabetes, but I just wanted to understand what your plans are a little more in terms of population change. If we're to approve an extra nearly 5,000 increase in population, a lot of those probably are going to be older. What you mean by the promotion of health and well-being, and how that will help to make this, the introduction of this, work really with partners together, and not be a case of us putting plans in place and then kind of chasing health to help make things happen, which has been the case sometimes. Thanks, Leader.
I mean, goodness, that's quite a big question, actually. So we have as you may well be aware, we have an infrastructure in place in respect of some of that health promotion. So we have pan-cluster planning groups, for example. Part of their rationale is to come together to talk about how we can work collectively across agencies, so third sector, local authority, ourselves, housing, etc., to and public health, to promote health and well-being. Diabetes is a easier one to talk about, in that it is type 2 diabetes in particular, in terms of some of the causes of that and some of the opportunities to halt the increase in cases of diabetes, which obviously do generate quite significant more comorbidities and therefore calls on health services. But there are others. So it's about general health and well-being, isn't it? It's about life opportunities. It's about good education, which is one of the other key wider determinants of health. It's about leisure services. It's about a healthy community and a thriving third sector. That's what I meant by we all have a responsibility.
I think I guess that, sorry, I should have been a bit more clear to try and understand what that looks like. So if we have 5,000 additional residents as part of this, and you're talking about a new build, Tuthill, for example, what does that look like in terms of being able to help to address the situation that we're currently in, where we have an aging population, where we're constantly reducing preventative care? It's just, how does that fit in with our plans for the LDP? It's trying to understand what the health element of it looks like in terms of how that integrates into this, so that those of us who feel that it's hard to even get an appointment currently can understand that, yes, we can support 5,000 additional properties with the support of health. I appreciate maybe it's not necessarily for this meeting, but I just feel like I need to understand. So when residents ask me currently, my goodness, you're going to build another couple of hundred houses in this ward, I can't even get a GP appointment, what I can say to them in terms of what to possibly expect that would be exciting.
Okay, so there's a few elements in terms of access to primary care. Obviously, these all the additional residents are going to need services across the health spectrum, but primary care is the thing that most people use most of the time. Directly in respect of Tuthill, for example, what we are looking to do there is replace currently pretty poor primary care accommodation in some old and adapted buildings. One, to ensure that it is fit for purpose accommodation that can be accessed by people with access needs, and we're talking to colleagues about sensory impairment and all of those sorts of things. But that also enables those services to work in an integrated way with other services, so community services, third sector, mental health, on the same site and in the same building, also local authority, community resource team, but also to promote more training opportunities so that we have a more sustainable workforce. What will come with additional list sizes is additional income for the practice. So if for every new patient you have, you get an additional annual income, and then the opportunity to have local enhanced services. So there is an additional revenue, but what practices don't tend to have is more space within which to work. And so it is important that as part of this development, we seek to try and look at opportunities to meet their accommodation needs as well as the ongoing revenue needs. And what I would suggest somewhere like Tuthill does is it provides the capital, but it also provides the training opportunities so we can grow new staff, not just GPs. Bodrenath is already a training practice for GPs, but the Plasmini practice that runs Guffin and Llysmeddyg also wish to take on trainees. At the moment, space is a requirement for them, but also for other allied health professionals who will work in primary care. So that then ensures that we are growing our own and growing the future, and also creating good opportunities for people to develop their own skills and careers locally and be able to remain, supported hopefully by the extra housing that means that they can afford to live here.
Got a few more speakers. I think, members, it's just important that we focus on a couple of things here. One, this is a replacement LDP projection on the numbers of residents there's going to be in Conwy over this period, and if those figures are correct, how we would look to provide satisfactory housing. As Alison said, having a decent home is a fundamental requirement for a healthy life. As part of that, we consult with the health service about where those houses would go and what mitigation would be put in place. We know from previous LDPs, these estates don't necessarily happen, either the number or the quantum, and it's over a long period of time. Chris, you'll back me up here, it'd be quite a number of years before a lot of these come to fruition, if at all. So it's important that we're not here to discuss the current performance of the health service. We're here to kind of look at the LDP and projections and moving on to the next stage. And I would remind members that Representative Betsy Cadwallader will be coming to full council soon, so we can have a sort of full discussion about our concerns around the health service in general and the impact that has on their residents. So I don't want to shut people down unnecessarily, but I am conscious that Alison's only here for a limited period of time, but I'd just like members to really focus on the report that's in front of them, if that's possible. So thank you. I've got Councillor David up next and then Councillor Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. To try to be constructive, and obviously we need the housing, we badly need the housing, and I want it to go ahead. But if the infrastructure is not there, we can't be like Mr. McCorber waiting for something to turn up. And that does seem to be, we need guarantees. Councillor Sherrill has highlighted the problems we have in Colwyn Ward, and the developments that are going to be built, well, hopefully they will be built, just adjacent to our ward, but all the facilities they'll be using will be in Colwyn Ward, like Cadogan Surgery. So really, what I'm really depressed me was when I read that from the Welsh Government, there's no more money for the health service in North Wales. So really, how can we expand? How can we provide these services? That's a question to Alison without the money being available. Thank you.
So, so obviously there is a revenue stream. So if Cadogan's, sorry, I'm not going to necessarily be too specific, although I understand that you're asking specific questions. If a practice has an increased list size, it gets an increased income. The issue is the premises. It's, as I mentioned, it is every independent contract holder. It is part of their contract that they provide the building. They are reimbursed through the contract for the cost of those premises, but it is their responsibility to secure those premises. Some of the conversations we've had in respect of this development, because it is so significant and because it's not unique, but it is not typical, that there's an area around Old Colwyn, in particular, and parts of Colwyn Bay, that is only served by Cadogan. Very many other parts of Conwy are served by more than one practice, and so the impact isn't felt by one practice. What we're talking about here is a large development within only a single practice's catchment. And so we're having to look a bit differently about the mitigation for that. One of the things that we've talked to Conwy colleagues about is whether, as part of the approval for such a significant development, that health facilities could be provided as part of that, in the way that historically, playgrounds or other things have been built, and that the health facility is the priority for any Section 106 monies, those sorts of things. The situation we have is that those Section 106 monies may or may not be sufficient to actually deliver a building. And so one of the things that we've talked about is whether there are other community assets that perhaps could be extended to provide some health facilities, rather than a standalone branch surgery, for example, to be run by another practice. So those are the things that we've talked about. The health board we don't have significant capital money to build that sort of thing. We have to bid to Welsh Government for it, and there are timescales around that. We can't mandate practices necessarily to expand their premises either. For example, that is their own decision as to how they wish to fulfil their contract. So, and we've worked with health boards across Wales to understand what other health boards are doing in terms of accessing 106 monies or similar monies. And at the moment, it's only Cardiff and Vale that we understand have actually accessed Section 106 monies to put in health infrastructure in this way. And that was actually related to, I think, something like 5,000 dwelling development in the Cardiff area. So obviously on a very significant scale. So this is to a degree new territory for all of us in terms of the available monies and how we can mitigate the impact. But the health board only has a certain number of levers, so to speak, you know, a certain number of things that we can do. And we simply do not have a capital allocation to build branch surgeries or to extend existing GP premises, but we can support practices to do that. And then the health board will pick up the revenue costs of reimbursing the practices for those spaces. Does that make sense?
Well, thank you for your answer. I think you've explained it very well, that basically the money might not be there to do the things you want to do. But, you know, obviously it's a conversation, probably not for now, but I think we need to look at actually health centres run by the health authority and staffed with doctors. If this model's not working, this model doesn't seem to be working, does it, Alison? And I think obviously it's not a question for this meeting here, but there needs to be an alternative in place to deliver the healthcare that people expect. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Chris online, then Emily, then Gromwich.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the health outcomes in Conway, my ward is in the centre of Colwyn Bay, has the worst health outcomes within the county borough, and the fourth worst health outcomes within North Wales. It will also be, as it was previously, the most affected ward by any redrawing of the boundaries of Cadogan. I wrote to you on the 25th of July, Ms. Kemp, regarding my concerns and the concerns of residents within my ward, who, whilst I appreciate we don't want to go in, I'm not going to go into detail, do feel that even this morning it was raised with me how residents been trying for 3 days to get an appointment at Cadogan and at the West End Medical Centre, which is where they would transfer to due to any boundaries, and they say it's non-existent service. But I do need to highlight the fact that the ward which would be most impacted by any amendment to is the ward with the worst health outcomes in the county, and that can't be allowed to happen as far as I'm concerned. We would be negligent as a council if we allowed that to happen again. Thank you, Chair.
Right, note your observation. Councillor Emily and Councillor Gromwich.
Thanks, Jay. Just a couple of comments and a question, really. So I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness. I'm also the Ward Member for Conway, which is where Tuttle sits. So I just think it's really important to remind everyone that we really, really need more housing in Conway. We've got a huge housing crisis that is happening throughout the UK. We're not exempt from it here in Conway. If anything, it is more prevalent here, with the need for affordable housing being extremely great. And not all, it does look daunting when you look at the figures, but not all those people are going to be new patients. You know, those people that we have significant numbers of people who are homeless and on the housing register. They're already patients, they're already here. There are residents in Conway, they're just going to be in different areas. And that's the same when, you know, you've got adult children still living at home and moving out. They're already there, they're already registered. So then this isn't going to be like an influx of, well, not necessarily going to be an influx of new people for every single house that's going to be sold. And we know from things like the growth of Airbnbs that we've lost residents over the years with that kind of element. So it will be really interesting to see the figures as time progresses as to how many new patients are on there, and how many new patients that are on there who are residing as their permanent address, and they're not, because you can obviously be registered at a surgery if it's your second home as well. So that'll be really interesting to see. But I just wanted to ask you, Alison, given the pretty dire financial situation that we're in as a country at the moment, and Welsh Government's finances, do we have a plan B for if the grant isn't there for Tuttle?
So at the moment, we're putting all our time and effort into securing the capital for the Conway West Health and Wellbeing Hub. The Welsh Government have approved the strategic outline case, so they've accepted the need for change and the need for some investment. And they have awarded us over £900,000 to spend to develop the outline business case, to design the building, all of those sorts of things. And we are incredibly grateful to the local authority for allowing us to look at Tut Hill and prioritise Tut Hill as a site. One of the challenges we've had with that geographical area is looking for sites. And I think Councillor Sherrill mentioned, looking back, some of the original discussion about supporting some of those practices started out with, back in John Hardy's time, looking at the leisure centre next to Tesco. The practice itself, Bod Reinacht, wanted to go where the old Daily Post was, which is now Lidl. That practice have been looking themselves for accommodation for, 15 plus years. Site in and around that area is incredibly challenging, and that's why we are working incredibly hard to secure the Tut Hill site, and we're in discussions with you about heads of terms and all of those sorts of elements. We're in discussions with the community garden about a partnership with them for social prescribing as part of the mutual benefits that we can get from that site, and we're working really hard to deliver that outline business case.
Grummy.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Chris, for the presentation. I'd like to move to the recommendation. I think it's a comprehensive report, and it's only part of the jigsaw that we're trying to develop. And I think the comments Alison made about working with our officers to look at opportunities when there are developments, particularly on our own land, that we can work with developers to possibly provide some sort of health and well-being or clinic area. So I think it's a very positive report. There's lots of work that he's doing to deliver it. So I'm happy to move the recommendations to 2A, 2B.
I think Councillor Chris did propose them, Grummy, so take it you're happy to second them in that case. Okay, I've got Councillor Sean Grady online and Councillor Gareth, and then I'll look to bring this item to close, members, because I'm conscious Alison has to go. Sean.
Thank you for allowing me to come in. I just, on the back of what Councillor Emily's just said, I know the two, I'm also for Conway Ward, and I know the two, Bod Reinacht and Llysmedig, are both coming to the end of their time as a building, and they are really struggling, especially Bod Reinacht. And if Tut Hill doesn't go ahead, or it goes a lot longer down the line, many years down the line again, then I worry about the capacity we've got at present, because if Bod Reinacht shuts, Llysmedig is struggling, I don't know where else our patients would go. And that's just, I just wanted to get it in. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Councillor Gareth, and then I'll look to bring this to a close.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. A key mitigant seems to be that we're raising money from the 106 agreements on planning. So I just wondered whether we'd made any attempt to estimate how much money we're going to be raising from the 106 agreements. And that's prompted by me just looking at the central information on page 66, which indicates that there's 1,260 houses to be built in the central region. The table obviously needs to be updated because that's referring to 1,452. But as far as I can see from that, there's only probably about 300 of those houses which will fall into the area that we can actually charge 106 payments for. So I'm just worried, have we made an estimate, and is it around what we actually need to build the medical facilities? Thank you.
I'll bring James Harlan in first. I know Alison's got her hand up, but I'm guessing James would want to speak in the section 106 issue. James?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And yeah, thanks for the question. I think, yes, certainly what we have done is we've started to understand, obviously, the impact from housing and the population growth within particular areas, and what we can realistically and legally seek in terms of Section 106 monies. So it's not just obviously those monies that are allocated and potentially coming from allocated sites, so the ones that we have in the plan coming forward. It's also windfall sites. There's also monies that are also already sat there that have come through from other development opportunities as well. So what we have done is we have calculated our complete population growth and housing growth and what we would take from each housing development up until 2032, 33. And that will be included on our background papers. It's not included in this report. Obviously, we can only take monies where there's a direct impact from those housing developments. And what that will do, that will be added to, in effect, a complete financial package, working with Betsy and Alison to understand how much monies are required to develop community asset buildings, etc., which was mentioned by Alison previously. Obviously, all we can do is take monies that are directly related to the impact from that housing growth. We can't overcome existing issues that are already within the system. So existing capacity issues with doctor surgeries, that's something the planning system cannot overcome. It can only take funds related to where we're impacting from those housing developments in the future. So we have had that chat. Yes, we do have the monies that we know can come forward, and we'll be working with Alison in bringing forward the PCS, the strategy, to see where and how those monies can assist with overcoming capacity issues in those areas.
Yes, I would say, work as quickly as possible to know exactly what you've got, because when we're working on 50 plus developments, they're quite, they tend to be the exception rather than the rule. And they're obviously the larger developments in the area. And we don't want to end up with less money than we thought we were getting. Thanks, James.
Okay, Alison, do you back in?
Yeah, it was just briefly, really, just a couple of small comments. One is just to be clear, Bodrenath, it is not shutting. Bodrenath is also committed to continuing to provide care in that building, which it owns, and they are committed, and we're meeting with them all the time to talk about the new development in Tuthill. So I'm just conscious that residents might look at this and start worrying that something's going to happen, and that there is no, that isn't the case at all. They are committed to a new building, and in the meantime, utilising the space that they have as well as they're able, which is what they're doing. And the other one is about comments about West End. West End has had a number of challenges over a period of time. But again, just to say, we're typically offering over 3,500 appointments a month to that patient population. We are providing a service. I do not question that some people sometimes can't get the appointment when they wish to. I don't doubt that at all. But there is a service there. It was described as a non-existent service, and I accept frustrations, but I just need to put on record that it is a service offering a good full range of access and care to the population.
Okay, thanks for that, Alison. I'll just bring Chris in, and then we'll try and
just very, very quickly, because I did say I had a question for Alison. Thank you for providing the list sizes and the GP numbers in Appendix 1 on page 80. Well, we've talked a lot about individual surgeries, which perhaps we shouldn't have, because this is an overarching policy. But I would just like to point out, I'll ask Alison about the worst figure there, which is in my ward, the medical centre at Penryn Bay, where one doctor's coping with 6,338 patients. And we're talking about 152 new houses going up in Penryn Bay under the existing LDP. So I just wanted to know whether the health board is giving that practice the full support that it needs, because on paper it looks that those figures look dreadful. That ratio looks awful.
They do. So I have sent an update. These numbers change all the time. So in August, I think, which was the last element, that was the situation. Since then, the senior partner in the practice has contacted us to say that he has employed 2 salaried GPs. So they're now up to 3 GPs, and that they are hopeful that one or both of them will enter the partnership at a point in time in future, so that it won't just be a 3 GP practice. It will hopefully be a more than a single-handed partner. So these things do change, but for that one, I'm very pleased to say there are now 3 GPs working out of Penryn Bay, or there will be in the next coming weeks.
Thank you for that reassurance.
Yeah, no, that's really useful, Alison. We know we all appreciate what you're doing, that you're doing your best to try in very difficult circumstances, but it does highlight that things are fluid and changes can be made. even within existing practices. So we've had a proposer from Councillor Chris and a seconder in Councillor Gromley. Can members show for in favour?
Just to reinforce the fact that we've altered the proposal in there
With
to
consultation with the
consultation with the relevant cabinet member. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're all still happy with that. Yeah, thank you. Alison, thanks ever so much for coming along. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, due to some rubbish chairing, I forgot to approve the minutes. So it's agenda item 4. So they're on, actually, pages 4 to 10. Apologies. Members, if you're happy, can I have somebody to propose them? Second, Councillor Chris Gromley and Chris. I'm sure we're in favour of accepting the minutes. Okay, so we'll go back to agenda item 8, part 2, which is to the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales annual letter. So back to you, Councillor Chris.
Yeah, thank you. So the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales sends a letter to the council on an annual basis, and this deals with complaints relating to maladministration and service failure, complaints relating to alleged breaches of the Code of Conduct for councillors, and actions being taken to improve public services. So the letter is attached to the report, and if you go to appendices A and B, you will see that Conway's performance regarding data on complaints is actually favourable, Leader, when compared to other authorities. The complaint outcome table on page 91 is particularly encouraging, and it should be noted that we have no PSOW interventions. 14 Code of Conduct complaints were received for our local authority, but one required no action, and for the remaining 13 out of the 14, the decision was not to investigate. So that's good news. Leader, the recommendation is on at 2.1 on page 81, and I propose that we note the contents of the letter dated August 2024. This has already been to Governance and Audit Committee last week, so I propose that we go with the recommendation there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Councillor Paul would like to ask a question.
Yes, the Ombudsman letter refers within the letter to us about the issues in relation to complaints handling. And in the Appendix B, it confirms that the largest proportion of complaints in relation to CCBC was complaints handling. 10 complaints received, 28% of all complaints. You'll remember, Leader, or you hope you might remember, soon after I was elected, you and I had a spirited meeting about customer focus services, both in relation to complaints handling, but also customer focus services in terms of the frustration that residents sometimes have speaking to the relevant officer and getting their issues dealt with, and particularly our residents who are vulnerable and have difficulties. The able and the articulate usually can manage our services, complaints handling and the like. Those that are not as able and articulate, they struggle. Now, the reason I raised this, in the meeting we had, and the officer who was there, who was, I think, leading at the time, was a chap called Andrew Saunders, if you remember. My best understanding following that was that Amanda had taken over the issue of customer focused services and was reviewing what we were doing and trying to look at bringing forward a more efficient and effective service across the board when somebody rings into the council, or even if they do have a complaint in the early stages, dealing with it, taking it through. So what I really want to know is, because I haven't seen it, is where we're up to with Amanda's report on these issues.
Councillor Paul, for that query. A range of work has been undertaken to address, I guess, concerns around customer focus, and Andrew Saunders is still actively involved in that. We've considered a SLT, so senior leadership team, options for whether we look to I guess bring together in a more coordinated way our customer services, and certainly again in the context of some of the work that SIF has been doing around looking at how we administer ourselves, then customer services is within that. So I think there's a range of individual activity done on a number of fronts around supporting the service desk, ensuring that the duty room is operating properly, and at an individual service level, addressing a whole range of functions, as well as looking at our telephony. And they've occurred. I think a bigger picture piece of work around how do we organisationally address our customer service in a more holistic way, and whether we move to a different model than we currently have is still under consideration, and I guess would potentially form, if that route was decided, one of, I guess, our paths in terms of transformation that we're considering and looking at. So I apologies, and perhaps I'll come back and give a more considered response to the extent you've slightly caught me offhand today. Is a range of activity has taken both small and piecemeal and a bigger consideration. I wasn't anticipating a report to be brought, but obviously we can consider that
Well,
in the
whatever
future.
the strategy is going forward.
Absolutely.
Because my understanding, this report relates to 23-24, and I understand this year, if I saw the letter right, we've already had to make one compensation claim payment to a resident in relation to complaint handling. So, you know, that was a complaint that went right through the system, and we've had to make a compensation payment. So it is a matter, I understand all the pressures, but it is a matter that we do need to get on top of. And if we do need to endorse a new strategy, then we need to endorse it. If you're saying to me it can be dealt with purely operational, I'm not as persuaded about that. I think we do need to rethink a transformational strategy in terms of customer focus.
Yeah, thank you, Kurtz. Well, yeah, and no, sorry, I wasn't saying that it's an operational matter. As you say, I think we do need to consider organisationally, and obviously in that sense get appropriate democratic endorsement as we take that through. But I guess all I'm saying is that sort of more transformational element of it is still to be discussed and agreed. But there has been a range of other activity to try and improve the processes. But absolutely, take it very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Members, any other questions or observations? No? Chris, you've proposed them. I'm happy to second, despite spelling my name wrong for the second year in a row. Not a churlish type, but yeah, happy to second the recommendations. Can we show for in favour, members? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to part 3, which is the performance self-assessment 23 to 24. You'll find that report on pages 97 to 213. So that's back to Chris again.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So I only introduced this large piece of work at overview and scrutiny yesterday, so I'm not going to repeat everything that was presented and indeed supported there. However, importantly, this self-assessment provides an end-of-year analysis of progress and challenges based on our corporate plan priorities. As we know, there are 9 citizen-focused outcomes and pertaining to the 7 governance areas. This is a statutory requirement under the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021, and it satisfies our reporting requirements under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015. So we need to ensure transparency and optimal accessibility. You will notice the new format of the report and appendices, particularly the links to meetings, reports, press releases, etc., plus the decisions taken here at Cabinet, at Governance and Audit Committee, and Overview and Scrutiny. Yola McGregor, our Strategy Performance and Engagement Manager, has worked hard with his team to achieve this. Going forwards, we aim, in the present climate of negative financial pressures and diminishing resources, to do more benchmarking regarding value for money. We also intend to tighten the time lag. I mentioned this yesterday. This report only takes us to March 2024. So as I mentioned, Yola and his team will be starting work on the April to September 24 self-assessment very shortly. Remember, this is a report. This report is a tool to examine performance. Are we achieving our outcomes? So the relevant recommendation for Cabinet today is on page 98, and that's 2.3. Overview and scrutiny have not put forward any further actions to address performance-related issues. So I propose that Cabinet recommends to Council that the performance self-assessment 2023-2024, as outlined in appendices 1 and 2, is approved. Thank you, Leader.
Great, thanks, Chris. Grummy?
Thank you, Leader. I was at Finance and Resources yesterday. This did have a good airing, as Chris has said, so I'm more than happy to second the recommendations.
Any other comments, observations, members? No? As you say, it was well considered by scrutiny yesterday. I'd like to record my personal thanks for all our officers. You know, despite the difficult situation we're in, it's very clear from this document that we achieve lots and lots of really, really good things. I think the spotlight, as always, will focus on areas where we don't achieve as much as we want to. But I think it's absolutely right to recognise where there is good process. And I'd like to thank you all. I think the way this report's laid out is really clear, and it's really easy to read, and it brings together an awful lot of information in the one place. So yeah, thank you all for that. There's no other comments or observations, member. We've had a proposal in a second. I could show if we're in favour. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 9, which part 1, which is council tax premiums on long-term empty homes and second homes. The report. Oh, sorry, Chris, I'll let you. Okay, apologies. We just had to wait for a few members to leave the meeting because they had a prejudicial interest. So yeah, this report is on pages 214 to 415. I'd like to start by thanking officers for the huge amount of work they do in compiling the evidence in these reports and the consultation. We have a working group that spends a lot of time considering all this evidence, and also at scrutiny. It had a really good airing yesterday. Housing remains a serious concern for this council. We know it's a nationwide problem. Over the last 14, 15 years, supply has absolutely not kept up anywhere near with the actual demand, and it's something that's very acute, both in terms of people having a decent home to live in, and also in the budgetary pressures that we're experiencing now from homelessness. It's a particular problem in Conway, given our geography and topography. We have a national park in 1/3 of the county to the west. We have floodplains in the east, Howe and Kimnall Bay. We have very limited infrastructure, and finding suitable sites to build houses in itself is difficult. That increased the cost of building those houses, and fundamentally, like all councils, we are dependent on external capital to build those houses. So it's a really precious resource. We're aware that premiums are not the only answer, but they are part of the solution. With a empty homes, especially when there's particularly egregious waste of a valuable resource, they're often a blight in communities in terms of antisocial behaviour and just the look and how they feel of them. So I think there's strong support from members to apply as much pressure as possible in order to encourage people to bring those houses back into use. I would re-emphasise that there are a number of schemes that we run as a council which will help people bring those properties back into use in terms of money to try and do them up. There are leasing schemes that we will that we can use. So anybody who's in the situation where they have an empty home would clearly like to give us a call and see what we could do to help. With second homes, we've always taken a fairly measured approach in terms of increasing that premium. I do recognise that not everyone who owns a second home is in the same situation. You'll be aware that last year the members were minded to set the premium at 200%. At the meeting where we discussed the consequences of that, I think there was a realisation that that was possibly a step too far, both in terms of unintended consequences and the impact on some individuals who may have a really good reason why they need that second home. So the consensus that meeting by quite a strong majority was that we would look for the second home premium to increase to 150%, also cognizant of what happens in other areas like Gwynedd over the border and the risk of displacement if we're significantly lower than other areas. It was a really good debate yesterday, and I think before I move, there are recommendations A through to F. I'm quite happy to move those, but I'll clearly open it up for any conversation, questions, observations that members might have. So thank you. Nigel, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. For me, this is a story of two halves. We've got the long-term empty properties, and then we have the second homes, the holiday homes. And for me, the long-term empty properties are the big win here with no risk at all. We can charge a premium, and the worst case scenario is those properties come back into use. The premium will come in very, very handy to keep all our council tax down. But I can't say the same for second homes. I think planning policy, our planning policy, has failed our rural communities. We just haven't been building enough houses, and in particular in the rural areas. And they've been hit hard by second homes or holiday homes. And I totally understand that. But I have real concerns about increasing the premium too much on second homes, because for every pound that we lose in a premium on a second home, that has to be paid by somebody else, and it'll be paid by the other council tax payers. I've heard the figure of £4.5 million we could lose if they all came back into use, and I question where we would find that money. I certainly wouldn't want to see £4.5 million put on the council taxpayers of Conway all in one hit. And then we have the other knife that's hidden there. There is the fact that when people decide to put their property up for sale, they won't be paying any council tax at all. So I think we've got to be very mindful of losing.
They won't be paying the premium, but they will be paying council tax.
Well, I think you get on an empty property, you get
There's a time limited.
there is a time limited.
It's not a year.
Yeah. So they won't be paying during that time limited period. So I think we've got to be very, very careful. And, you know, for me, 150% increase, I think, could be a little bit too high. And I just want the members here to bear that in mind, that should these properties return into use, we will lose that premium, and we will have to find that money elsewhere. But I'll listen to the debate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Emily.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate what Nigel's saying about the money, particularly given the financial situation that we're in as a council. But we have to remember that the whole purpose of this policy is to increase affordable housing, and we've seen from the figures that it's working. That is happening. It is steady, I would say, from the figures that we've had. Empty homes. I mean, I think Charlie, the leader, has done a fantastic pitch on all the bits that we've got available for empty property owners and all the schemes that we have available. So you've obviously been listening to me there. So yeah, but if you know, there's lots of initiatives that we've got available for anyone who's looking at getting rid of their property to bring that into the affordable units. I think we've done exceptionally well with the bringing empty homes back into use this year, by far better than any of the other years, by way over double what we've done previously, which again is really positive. I do appreciate the argument of the second homeowners, and I thought the speaker that came to Frost yesterday was very eloquent. It was very good, but it is very difficult to stomach that we've got hotels that are currently housing people who need homes, and we've got homes that are being used for visitors who could easily use hotels. And I think that given the fact that we are in the middle of a housing crisis, given the fact that those council tax bands A to D are the vast majority of those homes, that we are on the right trajectory with the current policy. I agree that we don't need to go too far too fast, and we do need to keep an eye on how that's going. But I think we do just need to keep in sight that we are in the middle of a housing crisis, and the aim of the policy is to bring back affordable homes.
I think it's worth mentioning as well, we do talk about affordable housing and homelessness, but you know, I dealt with the resident who was paying £1,100 a month rent for her and her 2 children. Section 21, no fault eviction. There was nothing to rent in the whole of the town. She ended up in emergency accommodation in Llanrwst, had a massive effect on her children's education, trying to get them to school. And she, as she said to me, I never thought for a second I would find myself in this situation where she wasn't rich, but nor was she poor. There just was nowhere available to rent. So it's not just about the affordable housing. It's actually just having that supply where there are properties that people who are working can actually afford. That just the numbers, let alone the amounts. So it's important to note that as well. Got Councillor Chris, please, online.
Thank you, Chair. I, as the Vice Chair of the working group, I'd like to encourage members to support this. I hear what Councillor Nigel says about second homes, but actually he omitted to remind members that we're actually paying more than £6 million a year out to keep people in temporary accommodation, and I think that needs to be recognised as well. So in fact, if we achieved all our objectives, yes, we'd lose £4 million in the premiums, but we'd actually save £2 million in what we pay out to house people in temporary accommodation. So for me, it's a no-brainer. And I think we have taken on board the concerns of all parties by not pushing for the 200% increase, but recognising that a smaller increase was necessary. And again, as the leader said, we considered the fact that Gwynedd were at 50%. If we come in at 150%, if we come in anything less than that, then we might actually see an increase in people moving from Gwynedd to Conway to try and impact, to take advantage of that reduction. So we're very clear, and as the leader said, that the move to 150% on second homes is the right one.
Okay, thanks. I got Conor Dilwyn in the chamber.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Dwi'n fwy na bodlon cefnogi'r argymellion fel ma' nhw. Yn sicr fysa gynna i ddim eisiau gweld dim llai na hynna. Dwi'n meddwl bod o'n hanfodol bwysig bod ni'n cadw fyny fo'n cymdogion yn Gwynedd, ac hefyd bod ni wrach yn atgoffa'n hunan o beth sy'n digwydd yn Sir Benfro hefyd, ma' 'na dwi yn cynrychioli ardal lle ma' 'na lawer iawn o ailgartrefi yna sydd wedi bod yn digwydd ers blynyddoedd, ac dwi'n ymwybodol hefyd o'r effaith mae hwnnw wedi gael ar y cymunedau yna, a tydi'r effaith yno ddim yn un cadarnhaol yn anffodus. Felly dwi'n fwy na bodlon cefnogi yr argymellion fel ma' nhw, ac dwi'n meddwl sa rhywun wedi eilio, os nag oes ne, dwi'n fwy na bodlon wneud hynny, Cadeirydd. Diolch yn fawr.
Okay, deal. So I have proposed them, so thank you for seconding them. And obviously this is a recommendation to full council. I think, we know we take this incredibly seriously. Every member gets a vote on this premium. But if there's no more observations or questions, member, we've had a proposer and we've had a seconder to move recommendations, A through to F on page 215. Can we show over in favour of that? Okay, thank you very much. We'll get back in the members who had declared an interest. Okay, members, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which sits in my portfolio 10 part 1, which is setting the budget business planning framework for 25 to 26. It's on pages 416 to 463. I'll take members to page 417, paragraph 1.8. You will be acutely aware that once again we face an incredibly difficult budget situation. The resource shortfall at the moment is estimated at £22.7 million. On the back of years of austerity and years of cuts, we all know how increasingly this gets more and more difficult to be able to offer the services our residents want, whilst fulfilling our legal duty to bring forward a balanced budget every year. The purpose of this framework really is to give a real clear structure to the decision-making process, both in transparency about how capital and revenue business cases are made, and also about any proposed budget reductions and any consequences, so that we can, compare like for like. Essentially, to meet the challenge ahead of us will be incredibly difficult, and we have to look at everything in the round. Our services all, in my opinion, put forward business cases that are justified, but we're in a very uncomfortable situation where it's about what is more justified or more essential or more important, although that word's incredibly difficult to use. So I'd like to thank Amanda for the work she's put into here. There's also a clear sort of timetable in terms of the important dates. Much of the situation is still uncertain in terms of UK government's announcement on the 30th of October about the budget, which will set the tone for funding for Welsh Government. We won't be in a position to know our provisional settlement until the 10th of December. There are also issues around sort of rates of pay and stuff which we don't set. So there's quite a few variables. We will, as always, endeavour to do this as professionally as we can, but I think there's no getting away from the fact that it's going to be another really difficult process for us all. So I will open it up for any questions or observations. Again, thanks Scrutiny yesterday for taking a lot of time to consider the report and how we will engage with them moving forward, so that members are fully appraised of what will be difficult decisions to make. So thank you. Any questions or observations, members? No? Gromy?
Yeah, I sat through the discussion on this yesterday in Frosk, and the timeline is there. We all have to get roll our sleeves up and get on with the process. Now we're looking at the areas of most pressure and coming forward with ideas on how we're going to achieve a balanced budget. So it's going to be a difficult time, but I think working collectively we will come up with an outcome that will help Amanda form a balanced budget. So I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Okay, I better move them first. That's my mistake, Gromy. So thank you. I will move the recommendations. Gromy, kindly second them. I've got Emily and I've got Julie.
Yeah, I just thought, as I know Julie has done previously, just to remind if anyone's watching, to say that this has been, a lot of these reports that are coming today have been debated thoroughly at Frosk yesterday. So we're not sat twiddling our thumbs, not speaking on them. We had hours and hours of discussion around these reports, didn't we, yesterday? So yeah, I just wanted to raise that in case anyone's watching it thinking, what are they all doing?
Okay, Julie?
I mean, there isn't a great deal to say, is there, other than, Gromy's right, we have to all work together, but I guess it's just to highlight to people and repeat that the situation is dire, and it's not just Conway, that's the case across the UK. I'm still ever the optimist, hoping that maybe some money is found, and, with a new UK government, perhaps they've come in and realised just how significant the impact is. But yeah, it's incredibly difficult, and we're going to have to work together really hard to look at ways of finding a way through. And I guess we politically need to continue to lobby that things are funded appropriately. I know, Leader, you repeatedly highlight the fact that other local authorities receive a great deal more, in spite of the fact that I think some of the pressures we have here in Conway are unique to us and actually should be recognised. We were discussing it earlier with the representative from Betsy, the impact of having an older population. Whilst we're not discouraging that in any way, it has an impact financially that is very unique to Conway, and that pressure we saw before looking at the projections, the over 85s are going to grow by over another 2,000 if projections are right, you know, and it's not easy, it's not straightforward. And yeah, I guess it's just highlighting the fact that we are going to have to work very hard, and thanks to every department that's doing that, and we need to, I guess, dig a little deeper and try and find something else or different ways of delivering services. But it's just to highlight really that the situation is worse than I've ever known, and yeah, it's hard work for everybody at the minute, so I think we need to be united in our approach to it. Thanks, Leader.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We need to lobby and make our case. It is incredibly frustrating. I think at a national level, the costs of social care, adult social care and aging population, that can has just been kicked down the road year after year after year. We're seeing huge increases in the cost of our children. We're seeing within our schools real difficulties post-COVID. And that takes money and it takes resource in order to sort those problems out. But the opposite has happened. We're getting less and less money. We're still being asked to do more and more. So we are, as I always say, we're not lawmakers, we're law takers. We have statutory duties we have to fulfill. We don't set pay for our staff. No one begrudges anybody being paid properly, but there's lots of moving parts that we have no control over. But ultimately, we're held legally responsible for setting that balanced budget, and we're held responsible by our residents for the council tax that we set, and those are incredibly difficult things to balance. But you know, we will soldier on. We've worked really hard the last couple of years with our officers together, and we'll continue to do the same for our residents. So I'll bring Chief Exec in.
Yeah, I think it's clear, isn't it, as already been said, it's a national issue, and I know how hard officers on every level in the authority have worked. Certainly over the past 2 years, when the financial crisis hit, it's been an incredible strain on staff, and we'll probably see a dashboard in terms of personnel issues that will be coming before you in the next couple of weeks, which shows the strain that all of this is putting on the workforce. I would, however, say that I'd like to thank Amanda, Jenny, and all the heads of service really for all the work they do in trying to find solutions to incredibly complex and difficult issues. We have such an array of things that we undertake as a council, and the report that Yolo prepared shows the vast array of different things that we do. And, you know, as with everything, we don't get everything right, but we get a lot right, and we do a lot for our communities, and we do thank all our staff for that. And from my perspective, it's incredibly important that we bear that in mind when we go through this process. It is tough on everyone, for you as elected members, but also for staff at all levels in the authority. I'd just like to make the point that I met with fellow chief execs across Wales a couple of weeks ago, and everyone is going through exactly the same thing as we are at the moment, trying to find all different ways in order to provide services in a different way, alternative provisions, reducing provision as well. As we know, it's incredibly difficult, but we should read this report. It will be one of many reports that will be coming before us in the next couple of months, but also we should look at it in the context of the resilience plan that we put through a couple of weeks ago, which I think adds to the framework that we're working to in trying to control in-year spend, trying to find alternative solutions to complex problems, and we will do all we can. And as officers, that's all we can do. So we will do all we can. Diolch yn fawr.
Yeah, great. So there's no more other questions or observations. I've moved the recommendations, which are on page 416 A and B. We got a seconder. Councillor Niles, looking sure we're in favour of accepting those recommendations. Okie dokie. So agenda item 11 sits on the education portfolio. Part 1 is consultation, the proposed federation, Ysgol Llanduduged and Ysgol Ysbyty Ifan. So that's pages 464 to 478. Julie.
Thank you, Leader. So in your agenda packs today, you have 3 separate reports, 2 of which are requests to start a formal public consultation to look at the proposal of amalgamating schools. And you have 1 report requesting to start a formal consultation to look at federalising a federation exercise. The term amalgamation describes a formal and legal process by which 2 or more existing schools become one. The amalgamation of schools is a more formal way of extending existing collaboration and promoting closer working relationships. The proposal and subsequent statutory steps will be in line with the Welsh Government's statutory code of practice. This is the first of 3 of possible 3 to Cabinet. First being a request to start a consultation. Second will be to share the feedback of that consultation and then to seek Cabinet approval to proceed with the next stage of the process, which is then to issue a statutory notice. The final will be to formally approve the amalgamation after considering any objections. So the first amalgamation proposal is between Ysgol Glangella and Ysgol St Elfod, which are in Abergele. They are currently identified as a separate junior and infant school based a stone's throw away from one another on the same site in separate buildings. As part of our strategic school planning works and recent changes in the senior leadership team, we've taken this opportunity to meet and discuss with governors, staff and local councillors the option of amalgamation. Through this report, we are now formally requesting that Cabinet review our request and approve for the consultation process to commence. The second amalgamation is of Ysgol Yforid and Ysgol Maes Owen. Similarly to the first amalgamation, the schools are a junior and infant schools in Cwmwl Bay area on the same site but in separate buildings. Again, a change in leadership has allowed us to work quickly to look at the education delivery in this area. And then the third report you have today is a request to go out to consult on the Federation of Ysgol Llandoged and Ysgol Ysbyty Ifan. The Federation of Schools is a legal process enabling schools to work together through a formal structure by sharing a governing body and will make decisions in the best interests of all the schools, staff and learners in the Federation. Both Ysbyty Ifan and Ysgol Llandoged are 4 to 11 age primary schools, voluntary aided Welsh schools. They're about 12 miles apart and currently have 1 head teacher managing both sites. So following a discussion with the head teacher, governors of both schools and local councils, we're asking the approval to consult on the formal federation of these 2 schools. And just to stress that this report today is around consultation. So this is to go out to consult. And as I said before, we will bring back to Cabinet at the different stages the results of the consultation and then the steps moving forward should we adopt that. So you will find recommendations for Llandoged and Ysbyty Ifan on pages 465, for Ysgol Glangella and St Elfod on page 480, and then the recommendation for Ysgol Yforid and Maes Owen on pages 506. And like I said, they're to consult, and I'm happy to move that, Leader. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Julie. I think we'll open up to questions on any of the 3 proposals, but I think then we'll go through the voting separately for each one, if that's okay. Is there any questions on either of those, Chris?
Yeah, thank you. Just the Federation of Ysgol Llandoged and Ysbyty Ifan, you've said that they're 12 miles apart, and just quickly confirming in the report that there should be no implication on the home to school transport outlay for this, because we won't presumably be transporting children between the schools. They will be still at their same school, but not busily being having to be transported.
No, so this isn't changing the sites. They will remain on the 2 sites. This is about federalisation of the 2 schools, 1 governing body working closely together with the 1 head teacher. So no, there won't be any change in terms of that. The reason that those schools are the 2 schools that are coming together is because they're both Church and Wales schools. So it's about similar schools having opportunity to come together. So so that's why. Diolch.
Great. Councillor Paul. Your mic on, Paul, please.
Welcome the consultations. My issue is, and on the first report, it's in paragraph 10.1, but it's referred to in the other reports. Obviously, as part of this consultation, parents will be able to see the strategy for the modernisation of Conway's primary schools. Now, that document is 14 years old. I personally find that rather embarrassing, that our strategy, our written strategy, is 14 years old. I don't really know how we got that through Estin, but we obviously did. It seems to me, going forward, because we're going to have further consultations about federation, amalgamation and closing schools over the next periods, that document needs to be brought up to date. I mean, October 2010 was a very different time to October 2024. So can Julie confirm that prior to us having further consultations, which I do not want to be held up, because I want to see consultations and other amalgamations, closures and federations taking place, but that we do prepare a 2024 strategy for the modernisation of Conway primary schools.
Thank you, Paul. I think John wants to come in on that in terms of the plan that we have. Thanks.
John?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Councillor Paul. We have the Strategic School Planning Board now set up, and that's something that we'll be reporting back on the new modernisation strategy. As you quite rightly said, it is a 15-year strategy that runs out October 2025. So that's something that we'll be working towards. The drivers in that modernisation strategy are the same. What I would say is that we have included more green schemes, the Welsh curriculum, the new Welsh curriculum as part of that, and our new ethos with the Welsh language, that we're trying to promote the Welsh language and skills as much as possible. So these will be included in the new strategy, and that's something that we'll obviously be taking through the democratic process as well for approval on that new strategy once we bring feedback to that school organisation group in due course.
Okay. Any other questions? Cromwell, sorry.
Ignorance, I probably should know. But the only reason, geographically, I would have thought the obvious amalgamation would have been Ysbyty and Pentre Wales because of their geographical location. But presumably it's just because they're both Llandoget and Ysbyty are church schools is the reason. So where does that leave Pentre Wales in the future, looking at amalgamation in general? Because is there such a strong reason that we
Yeah, diolch, Councillor Gronwy. So yeah, you're right. It's the status of those both schools that have driven this this federation, and of course, I think in terms of Ysbyty Ifan, I think we'd have found it very difficult to recruit a head teacher as well to such a small school. We know across Wales that that's a national challenge, recruiting heads to very small schools. Pentre Weulas at the moment isn't part of that change in a school footprint. Numbers are healthy there, and of course they have a current leader at Rhodri. So yeah, it's not part of our strategic plan at present, but of course we closely monitor numbers, capacity, information's publicly available. We have the discussion via the strategic school planning group, which is chaired by our portfolio lead, and we'll escalate any issues from that through to the capital programme board and subsequently scrutiny.
it doesn't rule out future amalgamation if circumstances change.
Absolutely not. I think the drivers behind any change within a school's organisation is the data. We collate that biannually via our Plask return, and we share that information with schools and chairs of governing body, because I think it's really important as well that they're part of that decision-making process. You know, we want to arm them with the information, the tools as well, so that they're thinking about the strategic planning in terms of school organisation. So no, we don't rule out anything. We just use the data purposefully.
Okay, Jill, thank you.
Okay. Nigel?
Diolch, Leader. Well, just with Ysgol Eforid and Maes Owen, my local schools, I think it will really benefit them, and I welcome the public consultation. There's a real bond with those schools. They work closely together. They're on the same site, and my children, Councillor Michael, went through the education system in both schools there. So I welcome this public consultation, and I think it will prove dividends for the community. Thank you.
Okay. So, Julie, you've made a proposal. I'm quite happy to second them, but just there's 3 separate reports. So just for correctness, if we can go through each one. So the first proposal would be consultation of proposed federation, Ysgol Landoged and Ysbyty Ifan. So if members are in favour, can we show on that one, please? Okay. The second one is Glangella and St Elfod, if we can show we're in favour of that. And the last one is Eforid and Maes Owen, and we can show we're in favour of that. Okay, wonderful, thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 12, which is in the Sustainable Economy portfolio. It's a revised and updated local area forum terms of reference on pages 529 to 537. Nigel?
Okay, so the report seeks Cabinet approval for the updated and revised local area forums terms of reference. In January 2024, as part of the ongoing work to review and streamline the programme and project structures and reporting on government's lines, it was acknowledged that a significant number of projects reporting to town regeneration programme boards will also reporting to programme and project boards, or were consistently updating on their progress at the relevant local area forums. Therefore, in order to avoid duplication, release capacity and ultimately save some money, Cabinet agreed that the town regeneration programmes would close and their work would be merged with the local area forums. It was also agreed that the local area forums could invite other partners to join their membership if they wanted. Members who previously sat on the town regeneration programme boards would also continue to be involved. The local area forums would similarly have the ability to invite external stakeholders such as town councils for specific items. In order to take into account these changes, the local area forums terms of reference have been updated and revised to include the work of the town regeneration boards and their members. I would therefore like to propose that we accept the recommendation, paragraph 2. Thank you, Leader.
Right, thanks, Nigel. I'll open it up for any questions or observations. Members, Councillor Chris.
Yeah, I'd like to second Councillor Nigel. We did in fact have a meeting of Local Area Forum North last night, and this was on our agenda, and everyone was very supportive and felt that it was a logical step. So I know we were a day too early in our support, but we did have unanimous support for this, and we had town council reps there as well. So it was a good discussion about local democracy and bringing councillors together for particular geographical areas. It works very well with Local Area Forum North, I have to report.
Okay. Any other observations, members? I think it's a good example for me about how we can achieve more with less resource. I mean, it was a bit controversial when it came out, but I think by being a bit clever and framing the terms of references so that it's what that local area needs, that we can do both, and saving officers time and duplication, I think is really important in terms of meeting the challenges that we have going forward. So is there Any other questions, observations, members? Nigel, did you oppose, accept the recommendations? I'm quite happy. Chris already beat me to it. When we show we're in favour of accepting them, members? Wonderful. Okay, so agenda item 13, exempt items, Local Government Act 1972, section 100A and schedule 12A, access to information. To consider passing a resolution under the provisions of section 100A brackets 4 of the above act to exclude the public and press from the meeting during consideration of the following items, as it is likely that if present there would be disclosure of them of exempt information as defined in paragraph 14 of part 4 of schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. So can we have a proposal that we move into private session? Nigel, second, Chris, I'm sure we're in favour, members. Okay, wonderful. We'll just wait a